Welcome to Morenci First. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for watching this week's message. If you would like more information about Morenci First, such as service times or ministry opportunities, feel free to check out facebook.com/MorenziAG or Morenci First at youtube.com. And two great ways to stay connected throughout the week is by hitting the subscribe button on our YouTube page. That way you'll be notified when something new is posted. And by hitting like on our Facebook page. Thanks again for joining us today. Welcome home.
Talking about, because we have a lot of those that are single and those that are looking and all the other stuff. And we kind of said, okay, wait a minute. Am I special? Am I somebody even though I'm not married? And the answer is absolutely yes. God has a plan for us that we said it's not about finding the right person. It's about becoming the right person. And God has somebody, but we have to make sure that we're ready. And then we stepped into marriage or dating, and we started talking about red flags. You know, what is a red flag? Because let me tell you, if we get the dating right, marriage is a whole lot easier. That was pretty weak, but I'm going to say it again. If we get the dating right, marriage is a whole lot easier. Parents? Amen. Or unless you're blessed like Sunil and someone just tells you. And then it works out, you know. But for the rest of us, if you get the dating right, marriage is a whole lot easier. And then we moved into marriage, and we talked, what is a Christian marriage? And we said that a lot of our world calls it a piece of paper or a contract, but the Bible calls it a covenant. We talked about the difference, and we talked about how God signifies that and how Scripture lays that out. And then last week, we kind of talked about what are 4 lies that I see on a daily basis that are destroying marriage and relationships. And today, we're going to talk about a couple of attitudes that I see that are kind of breaking down relationships. And then we have about 2 more weeks. We're going to talk about what is a Christian parent and grandparent. And then we're going to have kind of like a little discussion where I have a small lesson, and then I'm going to allow whoever wants to ask questions. We're going to kind of do like a little, I don't know what you call it, round table, Q&A, whatever. Because I believe this is a really hot button, and we need to, God is calling men to be men. He is calling the homes to get it right, and He's calling us to come back together. And I believe that Satan is out to steal, kill, and destroy, but he's starting in the homes. There's an agenda to destroy the father. There's an agenda to destroy marriage. There's an agenda to wipe out our next generation. And I believe that the church has to be on the forefront of this and say, hey, wait a minute. Marriage is worth fighting for. Relationships are given to us by God, and we are going to stand. We're going to proclaim truth to our grandchildren. So I don't care if you're married, not married, want to be married. This is for everybody because our world needs to hear that God has a plan. There is a design for your life. There's nobody in this house that's a random accident. You may have been a random accident to your parents, but you weren't to God. He knew your unformed body. God knows you. So I'm going to look at a couple of these attitudes, and we're going to run through them real fast. So put your running shoes on. And if we need to recover one a little bit later, we might. But number 1, they started it, an attitude that I see destroying relationships. Listen to me very closely, and hopefully you know this, but in marriage, you can't sin even if you've been sinned against. What? Listen, you know what 99% of marriage counseling is? Listening to one justify their actions because of their spouse's actions. 99% of marriage counseling is listening to someone justify themselves because of what someone else did. I know I said that to them, but let me tell you what they said. I know I threw the remote at him, but let me tell you what he did. You know? I know I cursed him out. I know I shouldn't have done that, but let me tell you what he said to me first. cheated because, I lied because, he did this, I did that. He did this, so I started. She did this, so I did. It's all, they started it. All the time. 99% of marriage counseling goes that way. Well, let me tell you, they did, I know there's nobody's marriage in this house where someone thinks, well, they did that, so I did this, or I responded this way. You should have heard how rude he was to me this morning. No one answered that question. It's because I'm right and you're wrong. Think about it. We somehow think that because our spouse has done something wrong in our eyes, which means we can now do something that's wrong in God's eyes. It's amazing. You know, it's like God's up in heaven and he's like, okay, you got 10 minutes. I saw what they did. Get it ready. I'm going to give you 10 minutes. Zing them real good. Let me see what you're going to do. Start the clock and go. Doesn't really work that way. We kind of think that it does, but one of the greatest attitudes that I see that is destroying relationships is this tit for tat thing. Well, they did this, I did that, and they did this. Constantly back and forth. You see, you don't understand, and I hear this, but Pastor, you don't understand. I got to defend myself. You just don't understand. I have the right to defend myself. Yeah, you calling him at work 2 hours after he said something to chew him out is defending yourself. You're thinking of a way to zing her back harder than she's saying you is defending yourself, You don't understand. I have the right to defend myself. I've been hurt. But listen, in marriage, you don't fight to win. You don't fight to outdo the other. You fight to bring a resolution that solves a problem because you're on the same team. You're together. You're trying to work it out. Listen, if a man breaks into my home, you fight with everything in you to bring a resolution to end it. If a man breaks in my home, you do everything in your power to destroy what is happening. If you mean my family physical harm, and it comes to me either ending your life or sacrificing my own, we will do that. But your spouse isn't your enemy. They're a gift from God that we're supposed to treasure and cherish, that we're not supposed to look for ways to outdo the other in the relationship of arguing. We're supposed to look for ways to how to treasure and outdo the other in service. You say, that's radical. No, that's biblical. It's not radical, it's biblical. Your spouse is not your enemy. They're your gift from God for you to cherish and constantly look for ways, not to tear them down, but to build them up. Listen, and here's the crux. When it comes to your relationship, and it comes to this area and this problem, it goes down to a simple little phrase. Someone has to do the right thing first. Someone has to do the right thing first. Now, you can be in a circle of trying to outdo the other. You can be in a circle of rehashing the same old arguments 24/7, 365. You can be in a constant upheaval. There can be constant drama in your home. There can be constant unsettledness. Your family can be in constant unsettledness. And let's be honest, sometimes children, and sometimes maybe you even grew up in constant unsettledness. There was nothing but strife and arguing and fighting and constant whatever. And we can continue the cycle, or someone's got to do the right thing. Someone's got to break the cycle and say, you know what, I'm not going to outdo, I don't care if they started it. Their actions doesn't define my reactions. Because I'm a believer. I'm different. And if you are married to an unbeliever, it even ups the ante for you. Because you need to begin to allow the Holy Spirit to temper your responses. Because if you start responding out of the love of Jesus, people start taking notice. But if we're still going at it like cats, is that word? Cat? Oh. Yeah. Keep going at it like cats. Cats and dogs, that's what I was looking for. I got stuck on cats, I don't know why. But you get stuck in that circle. It tears you down. There's nothing worse than circling the block 4 or 5 times because you don't want to go home, because you don't want to step back into strife. There's nothing worse than as the bell rings in your final hour, there's a knot in your stomach because you don't know what you're going to walk into. You say, why are you talking about that? Because the bottom line is we get in ruts, and even in our marriage, even in our Christian marriages. And look, if you're not careful, the rut turns into a long rut, and you stay in a pattern. It's not that we don't love each other. It's that somebody hasn't stepped up and done the right thing yet. And it's a constant cycle and a constant battle and a constant stress to everyone. But what I'm telling you is one of the attitudes that I see that perpetuates it is, well, they started it, and I'm going to finish it. You don't understand, Pastor. I have the right to defend myself. Look at what they've done to me all day long. And, I finally had to say something. I had to defend it. You know what you're really doing? Is you're throwing gasoline and making a bigger fire. And you're destroying what is there. Somebody has to do the right thing. Number 2, be the enforcer. I hear, look, I'm the enforcer. But can I tell you about redemptive love? Redemptive love, the Bible talks about marriage as redemptive love. It talks about the love of Christ as redemptive love. And redemptive love says that I'm going to partner with God, and I'm going to fight for my spouse. I'm going to fight. The focus isn't on my spouse even. My focus is on God and how big He is to change their heart. Again, your spouse's actions doesn't dictate yours. Jesus is the perfect example for us. What did He do? He says you're worth fighting for. He didn't wait till you to come to Him. He comes to you. He doesn't say, hey, you got to get it all right for me to love you. No, redemptive love is He comes after you. He said, look, I'll come after the one that's missing. And our marriage is supposed to be an example of redemptive love, where each of us have freedom to express ourselves. Freedom. But redemptive love says, I'm going to partner with God to love you. You see, your marriage and your spouse is worth fighting for. Let me show you kind of how this works. Because, here's kind of how it works. Once you've said your piece to your spouse, kind of thing, it's like, who then becomes the enforcer? And the problem is a lot of times in marriage, we feel like we're the enforcer. You know, and it kind of goes like this from a woman's point of view. Sometimes you're like, you know, I wish you would have come home earlier. I wish you would spend more time with the kids. And, you know, here's the deal. Once we've said our piece, if it's the truth, the Holy Spirit, which is the Spirit of truth, will then come into the situation if we allow Him to, and He will begin to work on the heart and enforce that. But if you become the enforcer, all you're going to do is not only alienate your spouse, but then sometimes what you're saying is not even the truth. So now you're not only alienating your spouse, but you're trying to push an agenda that's from your own point of view. So what do we do here? We say our piece sweetly to our spouse. Then we go into our prayer closet and we become violent and we sick Jesus on them. Well, that's what we do. You sweetly express yourself. I'm not saying you hide it. You sweetly express yourself. But then you go into your prayer closet and you get violent with Jesus and you pray heaven down and you're like, God, sick 'em. You know, if I'm right, be the Spirit of truth and reveal it. You've got to bring it to their heart. You see, only God can change the heart. And when you begin to understand that, then God begins to work on your side. But if you're constantly working, listen, we said it last week, you nagging Him 24/7 is not going to change it. You constantly, and listen, men, if you are constantly avoiding the issue, that's not going to go away. It's not going to fix it. So what do? We say our peace and love, and then we take it to the true enforcer. The Bible says that He's the Spirit of truth. And if we're in a Christian environment with a Christian spouse and wife and family, then what we're praying, God, you got to move in this situation. And the Spirit of truth begins to convict and bring together. And sometimes He changes you, and sometimes He changes them, and sometimes He changes both of you, but He works it out. But if you're your own enforcer, you head for disaster. Because you can't change them. You let Him work it out. Number 3, I'm a natural. Hope you're writing these down. You know, I've seen it happen over and over and over again. You know, someone expects marriage to be like a scripted TV show. Marriage isn't always easy. You know, I've heard it said that, you know, if you marry your soulmate, you don't even have to work at it. Well, I'm not going to tell you what I think of that one. Let me just say it this way. If your marriage is in a good place and you feel like you never have to work at it, your poor spouse, you're their full-time job. They are working overtime on you because somebody's working on it. Marriage takes work. It takes commitment. Marriage takes work and commitment. You have to come into it expecting there will be ups and there will be downs. Because that is the way life works. You also have to come into it with the understanding that divorce is not an option. You step into it. This is my redeeming love. I'm going to fight. I'm going to partner with God for this marriage. I'm going to partner with God. I'm going to let Him be my enforcer. It really doesn't matter if they started it, because I'm going to do the right thing. Now, is that always easy? No, it's not. Because everyone in this room is human. We were all made by the same old dirt. And in this dirt bag that I live in, we all want to say, I have the right to defend myself. And what that really means is you made me mad, so watch out, dear, here it comes. But can I say to you, to do a little spiritual nugget there to make us feel real good, how would we feel if God responded to us every time we did something? Aren't you glad that our Redeemer, which we're patterning our marriage after, the redeeming love that Jesus has for us, where He runs to us with grace instead of the sticks and stones? You see, when we respond as in up in the ante, the Bible says it this way: you are of your father the devil, which is a liar. We are never more like the enemy than when we are attacking our spouse. The gift that God has given us that represents Christ and the church, the covenant that is sealed between a man and a woman and God Himself. See, you have to go into it with the right expectation, understanding what is going to happen. But you also have to understand that when I step into a marriage, it's no longer me, no longer her, it's us. Now, that does not degrade you or says that you can't be a person. Now, I know there's a lot of nitwit junk out there where you got to fight for your right or someone's going to take it away. Well, look, my Jesus said the first will be last, and if you want to be the greatest, serve. My Jesus didn't come to be served, but He came to serve. My Jesus hung on a cross for those that spit in His face. There is no way that God is looking at you saying, hey, I give you your 10 minutes. He's calling us to a higher standard because we have been highly forgiven. Everybody just got quiet again. Oh, here we go. You have to go into it with the attitude of divorce isn't an option. And then number 4, I don't have time for that. Listen, we have to prioritize our marriage. And listen, the longer that I am married, the more I know absolutely nothing about marriage. The funny thing is in August, I'm getting ready to start my doctorate in pastoral counseling, and the more I learn, the more I know I don't know, and the more I do, the more I know how dumb I am. You know, it's a lifelong journey. And if you think you got it all figured out, let me just say you have a great spouse that's doing a lot of back behind the scenes work for you. But we have to prioritize our marriage. Women need to know that we would choose them every day. There's a video that I show, and I'm going to show it to you in just a minute. It's about 6 minutes long. And it talks about the reassurance, understanding this. Listen, there's no permanent switch in a woman's brain that says, I am permanently loved. There's a need in their life every day to know, hey, wait a minute. Would he choose me again? Am I reassured? Is there permanent love here? And when it comes to an attitude of marriage, one of it comes back to is, okay, I have to prioritize it. I want you to watch this 6-minute video and then we're going to close. I did really good. Look at there. Go ahead, Josh.
Talked about how important it is for us guys to feel respected. The other side of the coin is how important it is for women to feel loved. We know that, but what we don't realize is how easy it is for her to not feel loved. I didn't realize that inside most women, even women in great relationships, is this underlying insecurity. It's running under the surface, but when it's triggered, it asks the question, does he really love me? Am I lovable? Would he choose me all over again? And once her heart starts having that worry, you may hear or see some things on her part that are downright confusing until she's reassured that you do love her. The thing is, as a guy, that question rarely comes up in my mind. When we got married, I knew Shanti loved me. Even when we had a conflict, it's just a conflict. I don't wonder whether she loves me, but women are different.
What it seems like for you guys is that when you get married and you've signed the marriage papers, it just doesn't come up. But guys, there are a few key truths that you need to know here about women. First, there is no switch in a woman's brain that gets flipped to the, oh, now I feel permanently loved position. Instead, either as a conscious question or kind of running under the surface is this, would he choose me all over again? She needs to know every single day that you would choose her all over again. But the problem starts when she doesn't know that.
The second truth you need to know is that when that underlying insecurity is triggered, it's painful until she's reassured.
Yeah, guys, imagine that you and your wife have an argument over breakfast and you're at odds. You go off to work, you drive away. What happens in your mind to your thoughts of that argument?
Well, since I'm heading to work and need to be thinking about work, I push that argument out of my mind.
Kind of click, goes away.
Isn't that what it happens to you? Because frankly, when I come home from work, I'm sort of hoping that you've done that and that you've forgotten all about the conflict.
No. Like most women, instead of being able to just turn that off, click this off, what's happened is that now that background, that kind of underground insecurity has been triggered. And it's risen up, and it's kind of this roiling in the gut, and it feels like this, are we okay? And it's painful. I know it's surprising to men, but women, we truly need to be reassured at that point that yes, he still loves me. Now, remember what we told the women in part 1 of this, that you guys are wondering, do I measure up? That's your question. Am I any good at what I do? Well, remember, women are wondering, am I lovable? And in marriage, that doesn't go away. It just morphs to, would he choose me all over again?
My surprise was the magnitude of these feelings and the frequency of how often it occurs. 82% of women say this happens to them. Now, guys, we actually can understand this. Compared to this, how many of you think you'll never have to worry about providing for your family? How many of you feel you'll always be secure in your ability to provide and never have to think about it again? I've asked that so many times in our marriage events, and I've never had a hand raised. As a guy, providing is always in the back of our minds. We think the economy could go south. I could lose a big client, or if I'm honest with myself, I could be 3 or 4 mistakes away from losing my job. When I shared that thought in a focus group, one woman said, that's exactly how we feel about you and our relationship. We feel like we could be 3 or 4 arguments away from things going really bad. So if we're gonna make our wife or girlfriend feel loved in the way she needs, we first have to understand what triggers this feeling. What are some of the things that make this insecurity rise up in her? We just mentioned the most obvious one, conflict. If there's conflict between us or she feels you're displeased with her, it triggers this sense of, does he love me? Is this the start of something bad? Another one is when we withdraw, which frankly is often my preferred response when Shanti and I are at odds. But this often just exacerbates those feelings of insecurity within her since it's building on top of the existing conflict. Even in cases where there may be nothing wrong with her, when I may just be withdrawing or drawing away for some other reason, it'll create this feeling in her that he's pulling away from me. Something's wrong. Another one is silence. If I'm just plain out and out quiet and not talking, it may have nothing to do with her. It may have everything to do with what's going on in other parts of my life. Maybe it's business, maybe it's something else, but as one woman said, when he's silent, it must be about me. That's kind of the default.
Even if we know it's kind of silly, that's the feeling there. Guys, when you're angry, if you pull away, it really makes her question of, are we okay, even more urgent. And if you don't kind of snap out of it soon, it can be really torturous, honestly. And here's the thing, if that kind of thing happens a lot, she'll be kind of agitated, sometimes sharp, because maybe even that critical thing, because she's feeling so insecure. This is sort of subconscious, but it's really just a sign of a woman who needs to be reassured at a really deep level. But even if your relationship is usually great in any situation, once that insecurity has been triggered, really, honestly, she does need to be reassured.
So let's talk about what to do about it. Guys, you need to know two things. One, how to address her insecurity once it's been triggered, and two, how to prevent her insecurity from being triggered to begin with.
Even better.
Even better. First, once it's triggered, you have to reassure her that you love her. This was tested out on the survey. When you've had a conflict, it makes all the difference. If you say something like, look, I'm really angry right now and I need my space, but I want you to know we're okay. And the woman, how many was it?
It was 85% who said, maybe 86%, something like that, who said, if he would say that we're okay, it's such a reassurance, it's a relief. I can give him the space to go off and process and work through it because I'm not kind of looking for that.
Now that said, guys, there is a big caveat. You actually do need to come back at some point and talk about it. The women said, if I have to chase him down and talk about it 2 days later, it kind of loses something. Much of the goodwill I felt when he said we're okay has left. But here's the good side. Even with that, the women said the fact that their husband was willing to come back and talk about it actually mattered more than whatever the problem was that started the conflict. One subpoint in learning that our wives don't think like we do in these situations is that our wives often need a different response than if we were dealing with another guy. You see, for guys, if we get in some heated debate, we almost intuitively separate and head to our own corners where we can give the other guy some space to think things through. But in the research, it turns out that that isn't what your wife needs.
Yeah, when you are arguing with your wife, typically she doesn't need space, she needs a hug. Guys have told me that idea can actually be kind of scary, but at some non-emotional time, ask your wife whether the hug is what she needs for reassurance in those moments. And if so, guys, when you take the risk to reach out and do that, you will see her melt.
Okay, let's look at the second thing we need to know, and that's how to prevent this insecurity from being triggered to begin with. The answer is pursuit. Giving her the feeling that you're still choosing her all over again, every day. Now, a lot of guys are probably going, huh? What does that look like?
Guys, here's what it looks like. You are already masters at pursuing her every day. It's what you did when you were dating.
And now every guy out there is going, oh man, that was so exhausting. I got married so I could stop doing that stuff.
But guys, here's the thing. You're thinking of the big exhausting things, and that isn't what we mean by pursuit.
So what does pursuit look like to a woman? Shanti? Help us out.
As a girl, yes. Okay, to you guys, you think it means all the big stuff like arranging the candlelight dinner or the picnic in the park. And yeah, okay, guys, that's good. But that's not what we're talking about. Pursuit is a message that you send. And it's anything that says, I would choose you all over again, or I'm so glad I married you. You can tell her that and send that message just by reaching across and taking her hand when you're walking across the parking lot. That says, I would choose you all over again. And since she has that question every day, pursuit is giving her the answer every day through these little day-to-day things. We asked the women in our focus groups, what says this to you? This one woman got this look on her face and she says, a couple of months ago, I picked up my voicemail and there was a message from my husband from the office saying, honey, I was just wondering about dinner and then I just started thinking about you. I love you so much. I'm so glad I married you. I can't wait to see you tonight. Click. And she said, I saved that voicemail. And all the other women in the focus group were like, oh. And you could see Jeff and the other guy who were listening. They were looking at each other and like, what?
And it was really that easy?
It's really that easy. It's these little things. Like, guys, would you be touched if out of the blue, your wife said, honey, you know what? I just realized you were so tired the other night, and instead of sitting down in front of the television all night, you went out and worked with Johnny on his swing so he would do well in the t-ball game Saturday. You are such a good dad. It's just a little comment, right? But would it make you feel good? Of course. It's the same thing for her when you signal, I love you, I would choose you all over again in the little day-to-day things.
The key is to find out what says that to your wife. This truly isn't rocket science, but it does require you having this on your mind and thinking about it purposefully for a while. And the great news is, the more you do it, the more it'll become a habit. And once it becomes a habit, she'll feel pursued every day. She'll feel down deep that you really do.
Prioritizing our marriage, prioritizing one another, reassuring, letting everybody know, hey, letting our wives know, hey, I would choose you again, and letting our husbands know, you have my respect. I have your back. Attitudes that I see all the time, hey, they started it. Trying to be our own enforcer. Going into marriage, going into relationships thinking that it's some fairy tale without expecting something to happen. And then forgetting that we have to prioritize each other every day. If you're prioritizing your school and your work, even the kids, and you're forgetting about your spouse, you're out of order. The Bible gives us a direct order. It's first God, second spouse. Your job is down the list. First God, second spouse, third children, then comes your job. It's the godly order. And the one that wrote the order kind of knows how we're built.